Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. I hope that your week is unfolding beautifully, and thank you for joining us on this tremendous live stream that we have planned this evening. Lots of testimony from Congress today. We got Todd Blanche, the acting AG, hoping to become the permanent AG, who was in session today for a long time. Lots of questions about Jack Smith. Major fallout from what we learned yesterday. Jack Smith was actually accessing the internal messages between congressional people and White House officials. And there's some question about whether or not that was ultimately perjury. There are a bunch of people coming to his defense. We've got an alternative criminal charge that we think might be even more appropriate than lying to the government. And we'll explain exactly what that looks like as we go through the testimony here today, because the senators were demanding action on this, and rightfully so. Jack Smith, one of the most corrupt people in modern America. Hopefully there are repercussions coming. But we'll run through all of that, and then we'll hear what Jay Clayton, the acting or incoming DNI, has to say about the 2020 elections. We've got President Trump coming out tomorrow night. We're going to be here live, 9 p.m. Eastern time to cover that. And we have some questions for Jay Clayton and a little trip down memory lane to some actual firsthand observations of what people saw back in Georgia during the rigged 2020 election. All coming up. Then we'll see what's going on with Homeland Security, because yesterday, Mark Wayne Mullin and the DHS, they kind of buckled to Susan Collins and other very concerned Republicans who say that the deportations are a little bit too much for them to stomach. But Trump came out, reversed them. We've got the memo that went out to Homeland Security and a birthright citizenship new statute that has been submitted into Congress by Eric Schmitt. We'll take a look at all of that and get some deportation news. And then lastly, there was a judicial coup that attempted to get passed up there in Washington. The federal judges decided they didn't like Trump's prosecutor, Trump's U.S. attorney, tried to install their own, and Trump blocked them at the very last minute. And it's a fun story. We'll talk about that and more. It's going to be a beautiful stream. We always like to warm the tubes up a little bit, and hopefully we're coming through loud and clear all across the fruited plains of the interwebs. Looks like we are. That's tremendous news. Let's go ahead and get started, because we got a bunch to get to today. Starting right here, Jack Smith in trouble. We have a bunch of furious senators now asking the hopeful incoming acting attorney general, presuming to become the full-time attorney general, whether or not there is an investigation underway, whether or not Jack Smith will be indicted, prosecuted for some semblance of a federal crime, whether that's perjury, a conspiracy against rights, or a conspiracy against rights under the color of law. Jack Smith, as we learned yesterday, was actually accessing the internal messages. He said many times in Congress that he was not doing this, but there is a little sneaky thing that he's doing that I think he might use, and that many lawyers who are coming to his defense, we know the Democrat apparatus always comes out full swing, circles the wagons around their own, and they're saying he didn't commit a crime at all. We disagree extensively. And we'll show you the law, show you the statute that we think he is actually violating, regardless of what the perjury charge looks like. So we'll get into that. But we had Todd Blanche in Congress today, and a slew of senators were asking him specifically about Jack Smith. Now that guys like Josh Hawley, Chuck Grassley, Senator Kennedy, and many more all had their internal messages read by Jack Smith's thugs, bunch of people who were all reading the internal dialogue between the White House and the senators in violation of what we think are multiple federal laws. So here's how this exchange went down to kick things off. Acting AG Todd Blanche and Josh Hawley today.
That was a rhetorical question, but I'm glad the answer is yes. I want to start with Jack Smith and the latest revelations of his illegalities. which seemed to have no end. I mean, listen, I've had my text messages, did have my text messages by him scooped up, read, who knows what he did with them. I've had my cell phone monitored. He tracked my incoming calls, my outgoing calls. He tracked my metadata. He tracked my location. I mean, Lord knows what else. The part that really offends me, though, is that he didn't just do it to me and members of Congress. He did it to ordinary Americans. I've had Missourians come to me and say, I had FBI agents show up at my door, knock on my door and say, were you in Washington, D.C. in January of 2021? These are people who did nothing wrong. They weren't even here. They come to me and they said, what is going on? What am I going to do? I can't afford an attorney. What really gets me at the end of the day is he lies about it. I mean, he has lied and lied about it. And I want to just make good that claim. Here is a record. I'm going to read it to you, a record of Jack Smith's responses under oath now to members of Congress. He is asked, question, as it relates to members and their staffs and senators, it's just the toll records as far as you remember. Smith, that is my recollection. Question, did the records that you requested include the content of text messages? Smith, answer, no. Now, maybe there's some nuance I'm missing here, but it sounds a lot to me like this guy didn't tell the truth. Have you thought about investigating this guy for perjury?
We take testimony in front of this body very seriously. Yes.
Yes.
Good. Well, I think he absolutely should be investigated. I think he absolutely should be prosecuted, if at all possible. And based on his responses under oath, I think he should be. And I think it's time that we say that these people who did this, who engaged in this mass illegality, blatant violation of the separation of powers, blatant violation of the Constitution. We know what they did to President Trump. We know what they did to everyday innocent Americans. And that's before we even touch the issue of trying to recruit spies into Catholic parishes, sending members of the anti-terrorism division to go hound parents who went to school board meetings. It's unlike anything we've ever seen in American history. And my view is there needs to be accountability for it. I hope that you will investigate Jack Smith for perjury, and I hope that possibly you'll prosecute him.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator. And will you investigate him? Answer from Todd Blanche, yes. Now, perjury is the crime that is being bandied about right now, but I do think that there is another, even perhaps more appropriate criminal charge, because the defense is already coming out. It's emerging from all of Jack Smith's allies in the media, in the entire apparatus of the Democratic Party that they've set up with all of their various legal institutions. And they're very good at this. Jack Smith is not an idiot. So when he's answering these questions, he's kind of always making sure that he has an out on this. And if you recall, we rewind the clock a little bit. We've been covering Jack Smith since the beginning here. And earlier this year, around February and March, we had Chuck Grassley release information about the toll records. And we have to separate those from what we talked about yesterday when Chuck Grassley came out with his July release, which were the White House records. So two buckets of records that we're talking about. The toll records are the records that Jack Smith went and got from Verizon, AT&T, who actually admitted that they did turn over Kevin McCarthy's records. We also had, I think T-Mobile was on the list. So he was sending subpoenas out for the congressional records directly, saying, I want these, give them to me, subpoenas going out to the telecoms. And in those subpoenas, he was asking for toll records. And toll records, as we've talked about, are just basically the metadata of the transaction. So who did you call? When did you call them? How long was the call? What were the numbers of the originating source? What was the recipient's number? Same thing with text messages, but you wouldn't get the internal message from the toll records. So he did that. So one track going over to the telecoms, but then we also learned about the other tranche, which he got from the White House. So Joe Biden comes in, he waives executive privilege, meaning the White House of Biden will no longer protect the internal business records of the White House, even though executive privilege has largely been honored between administrations. Biden waived it because he's a partisan political hack. He probably didn't do it, but his own people did. They waive it. And then Jack submits a second set of requests over to the White House for the records under the stewardship of NARA, the National Archives. Once the privilege is waived, the White House under Joe then gave them all of the White House employee records. So these are not the toll record requests. And then once they got those text messages, they then corroborated those with FBI back tracing to find out what the numbers were that were being enveloped in the communication. So White House people texting other people. Who are those people? Jack takes it over to the FBI. They identify them as Congress people. So senators, representatives, and many others. We read through all of that yesterday. But what the defense is now looking like is that they'll say that it was only a question about the toll records. And so we played this exchange yesterday where Jack Smith is answering questions about this. And here is how that exchange went down.
Did the toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls?
No.
Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages?
No.
Can you explain for us on the record?
Okay, so his excuse is going to be, I was answering a question related to the toll records. My subpoena to Verizon, my subpoena to AT&T didn't include any request for the content. You're not asking about the other messages that I got that came from the White House. And so he'll say, I didn't lie at all. It's not perjury. I wasn't even asked the right question. And the problem is that they don't ask open-ended questions. They just say specifically, question, the toll records that you requested. He'll say, well, that was over to Verizon. That was over to AT&T. So it's not actually perjury because we weren't asking for those things. And then you get the second question, right? The records that you requested. That would be a better question. But he then added in the toll records from the members of Congress and identified those specific records. And so Jack Smith will once again say, no, in the toll records, I did not request any of the message content. But the real problem with everything that we've now learned is that Jack Smith was gobbling up through another bucket from the White House, from Joe Biden, gave him the message content of everybody inside. It encompassed a bunch of other senators and congressional Republicans and 3 Democrats. But inside of those messages were potentially privileged materials. We've got legislative immunity, we've got the speech and debate clause, we've got attorney-client privilege, and so on and so forth. And so the real crime that I think would even be more appropriate than this would be under 18 U.S. Code, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. In Chuck Grassley's latest release that we read through in extensive detail on yesterday's show, we saw that they knew that they had a filter team. They created it. They had PowerPoint slides. They had multiple meetings about it. They assigned various attorneys to different components to actually do the filtering. And it's critical that you do that so that the filter team doesn't actually share information with the investigative team. If the investigation team can read privileged materials, they can read your attorney-client product or your legislative privileged commentary and messages inside your texts, then if you charge them, or if they're a defendant in a case, you can say my rights are violated and that jeopardizes the prosecution. So they separate it out. Now, the problem, as we learned from Chuck Grassley, is that once the White House sent the messages over, they were immediately uploaded to FileShare and they were immediately deployed to Jack Smith's entire team. And in other words, they knew that these would very likely contain privileged materials. They didn't care at all about it. There was no filtering at all. And so they stepped on and violated the privileges and immunities that are secured and protected by the Constitution under 18 U.S. Code 242. Whoever, including Jack Smith, under color of any law, and remember, he was illegitimately appointed, not a real boy, was found to have been illegally appointed. All of the money that he took to lead these prosecutions was all invalid. He had no right to spend a dime. And so he acted under the color of law. And in doing so, he willfully subjects any person in any state, including senators, including representatives, to the deprivation of any rights or privileges or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution. And we know we've got a separation of powers. We've got congressional immunity, speech and debate clause, all of these things. All of this is perfectly applicable to Jack Smith. So even though the questions weren't exactly on point, and Jack Smith is very sneaky, like he knows what he's doing. He's not an idiot. Oh, you're asking about the toll records. We didn't ask for the messages in the toll records. And we didn't know at the time that he also got the White House records and actually got the messages of all the senators and congresspeople. So if we would have known that, maybe the questions would have been a little bit better. Maybe they could have been a little bit more open-ended. Maybe they could have asked a kind of a broad question and said, Jack, Did you, in any discovery or any records requested, ask for the content of the text messages? Did you, in any records that you received, toll records or anything else that we don't know about, did you receive the content of congressional messages? And those questions, if he would have said no to that, that would have been an obvious lie. But here, he's got a little bit of wiggle room and some sneakiness that he can use, and they're already invoking this. But that being said, I think there's a perfectly applicable secondary statute right here, 18 U.S. Code 242, and it's pretty serious. You shall be in prison for any term of years or for life if you're doing something bad, not more than 10 years. And so this is the way that they can move forward, even if they can't pin him down on a false statement to the government under Section 1001. So we don't want to hear about any inability to charge him. Todd Blanche now has it all ready to go. It's right under here, under the Cornell website and in U.S. Code. And so pick that up and run with it. Now, the senators are kind of, talking about the lying under oath. And here's what Eric Schmitt had to say. He said, Jack Smith, parentheses, a certified dirtbag, 100% true, lied to Congress under oath. And Jack, he was lying by omission, okay? He was just saying, well, you're not asking me about a very specific bucket. And in this little bucket, he's limiting it off. I did not ask for those records when it comes to the toll records that came from Verizon. That's a federal crime. And by the way, I'm not saying that he should not be charged. He should be charged, and Jack Smith can use that defense. But in addition to the Section 1001 charge, we also want to see deprivation of rights under color of law. So I just told AG nominee Todd Blanche that Jack Smith should be prosecuted. We agree. We need justice. The weaponizers must finally face consequences. And how much more can we take from this crap? We already saw he was spying on their toll records. As bad as that is, nothing happened. Then we learned that Jack Smith was also mishandling classified documents while he was prosecuting President Trump. He left the SCIF door wide open. Nobody closed it and logged it as closed. Nobody opened it and logged it as opened because it was already open. Somebody showed up the next day. Hey, who opened the SCIF? No one. It was already open. What do you mean the SCIF was open? There's classified documents in there. You're charging the president with mishandling classified documents, and your team is doing the very same thing. So they should be prosecuted. There should be a broad, massive investigation into this. Here's what Eric Schmitt had to say to Todd Blanche today in the Senate during the confirmation hearings.
We lived through Jack Smith, and the chairman has just revealed new revelations, of course, that he was reading text messages. By the way, Jack Smith testified under oath he didn't do that. He testified that they just had the phone logs. We know that's not true now. Jack Smith should be subject to prosecution for lying to Congress. So this weaponization, let's draw a distinction. When you go after your political opponents, that is a weaponization. When you hold people accountable who weaponize the justice system, that's not the same thing.
And so we'd like to see all of the charges come down, and then Jack Smith can defend himself. Here's more from Eric Schmitt.
I heard one of my colleagues say that this is the most troubled Department of Justice in history. I happen to live through the previous administration where you had a Department of Justice completely weaponized against political opponents. They tried to throw their chief political opponent in jail, ruin his family's lives. You were his lawyer to see some of that, and I was with you in a courtroom in New York to witness that defense in one of those cases. Were aimed against Catholics in this country who happened to attend a traditional Catholic Latin Mass, went after parents under the Patriot Act for showing up to school board meetings to object to critical race theory or the masking of their kids. We lived through Jack Smith, and the chairman has just revealed new revelations, of course, that he was reading text messages. By the way, Jack Smith testified under oath he didn't do that.
All right, so a double clip there from Eric Schmitt on his official X account. But there was more here. We had Senator Kennedy, who is also unhappy about this, having been the victim of Jack Smith. Here is one from Brianna Morello. Shout out to her. And she's reached out to the DOJ for comment on this, but they haven't responded to her. But here's what Kennedy had to say sitting next to Marsha Blackburn. All of them victims of Jack Smith. It's like if they can't get justice for themselves as sitting senators in the United States Congress, can anybody? Probably not. Here's Kennedy.
Did Jack Smith read my email?
I'm not sure, Senator. I don't know.
Would you check for me?
We will check, Senator, yes.
I think he read Senator Grassley's emails.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, man. Yeah, he probably did read your emails, but we're talking about text messages as well. So that's really what he got when he was getting the White House stuff. So I'd like to just be very specific about this so that Todd Blanche knows that the senators mean business. He may have gotten emails, but what Grassley released was about text messages, not emails. As far as we know, they were the actual phone numbers that were cross-referenced and backtraced. So here's more Kennedy.
How did he, how can someone at the Department of Justice get Senator Grassley's emails without probable cause?
There are checks in place that should make it extraordinarily difficult for a prosecutor to collect and review a senator's emails or a congressman's emails or a lawyer's emails or other folks that have privilege protections associated with their communications. And those checks and balances should always be used.
But Mr. Smith just ignored them?
I cannot speak for Mr. Smith, Senator.
Well, you have the documents.
Would you?
Chuck Grassley released them. They set up a filter team and they did not use it. You can see it in the emails. They got all of the records from Biden's White House. Then in those records, they did not filter anything out. They just uploaded them to the file share and deployed it to Jack Smith's entire team. So based on that record, he did violate these protection procedures that are a part of the DOJ, and you're running to be the new AG.
You check for me first if he read my emails. And
we will check.
Number two, how he got them.
The White House.
Number three, I don't mean to single out my friend Senator Grassley, but what emails did he get of Senator Grassley? And I mean, what were they limited to, if at all? You know, did he get emails of Senator Grassley talking about his corn harvest and all that? And who did he share them with? Do you know if
his entire
Mr.
team
Smith shared my emails with Attorney General Garland?
I do not know.
Can you check for me?
We are investigating that, Senator, yes.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to know all that.
Okay, well, we already know that because Chuck Grassley released a whole tranche of documents yesterday. I should send him the video from yesterday's show. But all this is actually legitimately happening. And for those of you who missed the Skiff story, this is what we're talking about. So Chuck Grassley released this a couple months ago. And what we learned is that they were also mishandling classified information. First of all, they let somebody in and access the classified information when they had no reason to know this. And there was at least one instance where the potential movement of classified materials that were in a SCIF, a sensitive compartment information facility, was unaccounted for. So they lost or added classified materials that were mishandled, which is a crime that they were prosecuting the president for. And a violation and incident occurred when a SCIF that's accessible to Jack Smith's team was left open at least overnight and potentially even longer. All of it documented right here. And we read through this a couple weeks ago when it came out. Here's the question. Couple of exchanges here. This guy, WGO, says, I tried to lock up this SCIF, but apparently my PIN isn't working. It got upset with me and it now says the door is alert. Okay, do I need to just find someone who had PIN access who can enter their PIN? Disregard, I found TPW. He was able to assist in closing this. I'll reach out tomorrow. Another message comes in on Friday, the 19th of 2024. Joe Biden's people are still here. From CVR. Question, who opened the SCIF yesterday? That's usually the go-to for closing if no one's around. Second message from CVR. Did you get your PIN issue resolved? Just a few seconds later. He says, I drafted the email this morning and got pulled away. I'm going to send it shortly. Then WGO says, no one opened it yesterday. Why? Because no one closed it the day before. CVR says, what? Who opened it the day before? Who opened the skiff and didn't close it? So I didn't have to open it because it was open. She said, that's a violation and incident, so I need to know the details. Says SLV did it. Okay, I'll send an email. Then she responds, CVR, okay, going forward, if I'm not there, will you please check the skiff before you leave so you can ensure that it's freaking closed? Now that Raskin and Brett are gone, I'm very limited in help and oversight. That's why I checked last night. I was planning on doing that going forward, says WGO. Yeah, I'm going to check every night now. That's why I checked last night. I don't want people forgetting. Skiff wide open. And this presumably contained evidence against the president. Okay, so the evidence no longer has a sealed chain of custody. It's like if you get your blood drawn for a DUI and somebody just opens the lid on it, breaks all of the seals, and you can't validate whether somebody put a bunch of drugs in there or put some alcohol in there and then closes it back up and says, don't tell anyone about anything that happened. Insane. So then somebody says, sheesh, it never ends. It's such a problem. And it's a massive problem. All right. So the senators, I really wish, would actually read the releases from Chuck Grassley, because they would see that they were gobbled up in everything that we talked about yesterday. And it includes the biggest senators that are out there. And it was all about their text messages. Okay. NARA gave the texts to Jack's office. Within half an hour, one of Smith's senior lawyers, Thomas Wyndham, downloaded the text messages. And again, these are not toll records. These came over from NARA. These were not the records from Verizon. They were the contents of the messages from the White House. Within 1 hour, they downloaded them, and other members of the team began reviewing the texts. It appears that the review was done and the filter team did not have time to evaluate and segregate any privileged information. And it involves all of these people. Tom Cotton, Lamar Alexander. Is Kennedy on this list? Let's see. Kennedy. I don't think he's on the list. Maybe so that's why he's not concerned about his text messages. But they got a bunch of people, 44 in total. And that is, if they're reviewing their messages without properly filtering them, that is an infringement of their rights for removing attorney-client privilege out of there. It is impeding their legislative privilege and violating the speech and debate clause that exists under the Constitution. That's why it's a conspiracy against rights, and that's why Jack needs to be charged. Even if he didn't specifically lie about getting the messages related to the toll records, this is still a crime and a problem, and he should be prosecuted accordingly, as should the people who mishandled the classified documents. So we've got more when this is getting duked out between pencil neck Adam Schiff and DAG Todd Blanche, who's now hopefully going to ascend into full-time AG. Jack Smith, of course, and his report comes up when pencil neck brings it back up. Here's how this went down.
You didn't recuse yourself from that matter. You were
No,
willing.
there's no reason to, from the Proud Boys matter?
Yes, it was.
Lawyer,
it
you know
was,
the rules.
it was
There are
the-
rules that
it-
say when I
yes,
have to
there
be
are
recused,
rules.
and that's not one of them.
And there are rules. And when you're told to recuse yourself from investigations
I
that
always
you
do.
handle for the president, you're supposed to recuse yourself.
No, when I
So
represented the president.
you have also said, you've also refused to release Volume 2 of the Special Counsel's report. That was an investigation into the Mar-a-Lago documents case. How is that not an abundant conflict of interest?
Jack Smith's fake report is an entire conflict of interest because he was illegally appointed. Judge Cannon found that in a federal court. We know how much they love pulling that out of their butts and say, a federal court 60 times, whatever. Cannon said Jack was illegally appointed and illegally apportioned. He used a bunch of money to write a fake report that he had no power to write, no funding should have been provided to him to write any of that at all. So why would we release a report that came from an illegal prosecutor who should have never been writing a report or touching a government computer related to this case at all?
refusing to release to the public an investigative report of an investigation into your client.
I am not a judge. A federal judge.
No.
has said
The
it cannot be
department's
released.
position under you, Mr. Blanche, was do not release the report.
So that position,
If you went into court asking them to release it, it would be released by now. So how is that not a patent conflict of interest?
what you're saying happens to not be true. I did not do that. What you're talking about happened before
So
I became the
you
Deputy
support
Attorney
the
General.
release of Volume 2?
No, I don't, but I'm recused and it had nothing to do with that case. Like, you can't accuse me of violating my ethical rules and then lie about what I did.
Sometimes I wish I just had a microphone right into one of their ears so we could make our points, but maybe one day we can do that. But anyways, it was an illegal prosecution. It was an illegal report. You don't get to just use a fake report that was produced by a fake prosecutor, Adam. So that's Todd Blanche. We also had Harriet Hageman. She came out today and said this: Jack Smith was horrifically corrupt. She's a representative out of Wyoming. Said Smith silenced members of Congress to prevent opposition and oversight of an illegitimate investigation and admitted so under oath, and he must be held accountable. Here's a recap on Jack Smith's most heinous offenses, courtesy of Harriet.
On the evening of January 6th. Additional subpoenas were approved in May 2023. Penn acknowledged their creation of, quote, litigation risk, end quote, and highlighted judicial precedents that the speech or debate clause's bar on compelled disclosure is absolute. During this time, Smith's team continued to rely on the argument that the speech or debate clause was inapplicable since the subpoenas sought non-content records from a third party. Despite warnings internal to the DOJ and correspondence from AT&T alluding to potential violations of the speech or debate clause, Jack Smith and his team continued to run roughshod over the constitutional protections of both members of Congress and their staff. Making matters worse, Smith's team, by seeking non-disclosure orders or NDOs for each of its congressional toll record subpoenas, denied members of Congress the ability to exercise their rights.
Yeah, NDOs, non-disclosure orders. So when Jack was going and ransacking Congress's legally protected conversations, he got judges like Boasberg, Jeb, to say, you can't even tell the Congress people about it. And then the DOJ actually reverted their rule, right? So they opened up the rule so that Jack could go do this according to internal policy. And then once he did it, then they closed the door behind them. It's a conspiracy, and they did it against the rights of our own elected officials, which means they're doing it to us by proxy.
Smith conceded this point, testifying that, quote, inherent in getting an NDO is that people who might have arguments about why to quash a subpoena won't be able to make those arguments, end quote. Jack Smith was a horrifically corrupt individual.
Yes.
And should be held accountable for what he did.
Yes.
Based on this series of events alone, reforms are clearly necessary to prevent this sort of weaponization from occurring ever again.
One way to make sure that it never happens again is to punish the people who did it, so that there is a strong disincentive to anybody who thinks about doing it again. Now, here's more from Kennedy. He was outside. Lindell TV was on scene. And here's what he had to say about his emails.
I think I don't know Mr. Smith. I've never met him. I've just watched him operate. I think he's a political zealot.
Yeah.
I think he's an ideologue. I think he hates Republicans. And I don't think he deserved to be, nor does he deserve today to be anywhere near power. He exercises power emotionally and immaturely. And he's just not the kind of guy you want to be a prosecutor, in my opinion. And I think the facts are starting to bear that out. And I think he ought to hide his head in a bag.
Should Jack Smith be compelled to testify under oath regarding Arctic frost?
Fine with me. I think it's a swell idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea. Bring him back now that we know that he was gobbling up your internal messages, not Kennedy's, but a bunch of other senators. Bring him back, put him under oath, and ask him more about that. And if he lies again, hit him again. So while this is all happening, some more reaction over here, courtesy of Fox News. We have Bill Malugin, who was out talking to some other congressional folks, and here's what they had to say.
These revelations are coming to us after Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, released these records yesterday, which he says were turned over to his committee by the Department of Justice. Now, those records reveal that 44 lawmakers had their text messages with Trump administration officials in the final weeks of his first presidency collected and read during Jack Schmitt's probe. And Republicans who are on that list are outraged.
Well, first off, it's outrageous. It's disgusting. It just shows you exactly what the Biden administration was.
I mean, I'm pretty irritated. I was irritated when I knew they were reading the text messages of members. I'm not a lot happier now that I know that it's me.
And some Republicans are now accusing Jack Schmitt of lying under oath. This is after he said repeatedly during a December deposition with Congress last year that his probe didn't collect text messages.
The toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls?
No.
Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages?
No.
Well, Senator Rand Paul, who had his text collected, reacted on X, saying in part, quote, December 2025, Jack Schmitt swore under oath that he didn't spy on text messages belonging to members of Congress. Today, new evidence confirms he spied on dozens of members of Congress, myself included. This is a blatant abuse of power and exactly what our founders warned about. Senator Josh Hawley, who was also on the list, adds, quote, looks like perjury.
Yeah, and so he'll just say, I didn't lie about the toll records, and you didn't ask me about the White House records, lying by omission. But we need the DOJ to do something, honestly. It's like, do you need every single senator to be upset about it before Jack Schmitt has a proper investigation into him, or what's it going to take? Now, we had some conversation yesterday about Trump's other prosecution. Jack Schmitt was just one hack prosecutor in the entire endeavor. But there was also Alvin Bragg, who had Joe Biden's number 3 at the DOJ, called Matthew Colangelo, leave the DOJ, go over to work for Alvin Bragg as some sort of career enhancement when he's at the apex of his career at the DOJ. We know that Trump is appealing the conviction in the so-called hush money case that was completely reliant on a convicted perjurer called Michael Cohen and a hack judge called Juan the Con Mercan, who was somebody who donated to anti-Trump organizations and even donated to Joe Biden before convicting him. We saw that Trump is appealing this, and we got some updates on the actual appeal. So this is coming from the Southern District of New York, the federal court. Trump is trying to remove this state prosecution up into the federal system. And so they provided this update not too long ago. They said, all right, we're giving you notice that on June 22nd, we agreed to extend briefing in the appellate case. So Juan the Con's case is being appealed to reverse those 34 fake convictions. And they extended some of the briefing. So July 29th, we'll get another brief. Then a reply brief from President Trump to close it out is going to be on September 18th. And so we've got some time on this. We're keeping our eye on it, but I know some people were asking about what's the status of this one. So we've got some more deadlines coming up, but we're not done yet on this one. We want to win this one too, because the whole thing was as partisan and biased as it could possibly get. Now, talking about what happened in 2020, which led to the prosecution of President Trump for daring to say that the election was rigged, we have a new incoming DNI nominee, this guy right here, Jay Clayton, who we don't know a lot about. Do know that he's been very, very busy in his earlier years, kind of doing things with China and some other things around the world. And so we don't know exactly what his positions are, but he was also testifying today about the elections. And we know President Trump is going to be coming out on Thursday night, apparently with a big reveal. We'll see what it is. But here's Jay Clayton getting asked about election integrity, one of the main issues of the country. If you don't have actual legitimate elections, do you even have a country? Here's what Clayton had to say.
I said doing an absolutely terrible job on election integrity. What did that mean?
That meant that the audit trail that we have available for our elections in a number of places is not the kind of audit trail that you would expect in something that is this important. That's what it meant. And I mean,
so is there a problem of voter fraud in this country?
I don't think we can say definitively whether there is or is not until we have better processes.
We've had hundreds of analyses. We've had the Heritage Foundation study that found 1,650 cases out of 2 billion votes counted.
I would love for the American people to have incredible confidence in the integrity of our elections.
I would too.
I said,
Yeah, so we've got some chain of custody problems. We can't really validate whether there's fraud or not. Remember some of these affidavits that were submitted under penalty of perjury and under oath back from the 220 election? This one was signed on 8/24/2021. Joe Biden is already the president. They say that all of this was properly investigated and blah, blah, blah. But here's what this person said out of Cobb County in Georgia from Rosemarie Parish. She said, I observed thousands of mail-in absentee ballots in pristine condition being counted at the back of the room. These ballots caught my attention because the paper looked perfect with no folds or creases. And if it's an absentee ballot in the mail, it should be folded up. I knew they were absentee ballots because of the size of the paper. I thought that was odd because they would be in such pristine condition. Why would that be? It looked like they came off the printer. I moved closer to the table and looked at the tally sheet to verify that they were indeed mail-in ballots. They were. The tally sheet was marked as such, absentee mail-in. While closer to the ballots, I noticed that the print on the ovals looked perfectly printed as well. The ballots had the appearance of being copied off a printer. I thought that was unusual, but up to this point, I did not realize it was a potential issue. It was a couple of weeks later at the Senate hearing that I heard another lady testify. She saw the same thing. Same type of pristine ballots being counted in Fulton County. One senator suggested to the committee that these were duplicate ballots. I know for a fact what I observed were not duplicate ballots, as those were being counted in a separate room, and I had checked the tally sheet. And they kicked a lot of these people out. When I first got to the recount room, I stood in the front room to observe the process. At the time, I did not realize this was the Democrat area. One of the election workers approached the Democrat volunteer supervisor and said that he needed her help counting. I told him, I've got an accounting background. I can help. He mumbled a bit, but didn't take me up on the offer. Then he left. The Democrat volunteer told the group that he was her best friend. Republican explained to me that counters are picked at random, and there were back rooms that we were not permitted to go to, so they may have gone there. Now, while observing the hand recount, I stood back away from one of the tables. I was listening to the counters. I overheard them say they were missing 2 batches of ballots from their box. I proceeded to write down the box number, didn't see anything observed that was being done about the missing ballots. One of the Republican watchers was concerned because she observed the workers changing totals on the original tally sheet that came with the ballot box. She reported it to one of the election worker supervisors. He told her that they were not changing the numbers, just initialing things. I personally witnessed them not doing that, crossing out the original tally numbers and changing those numbers. And you may just say some crazy lady, whatever. There's like hundreds of these affidavits in all of the various lawsuits that we've covered here. Tons of this. And there was no investigation into this. How do we know? Because David Perdue, the senator in Georgia at the time, observed election fraud. He told Vic Reynolds, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations lead, that he observed it. And Vic Reynolds told him, I'm not even investigating you, Senator, so just shut up. Governor Kemp told me that we have to be team players. It's all in the deposition. We've read it here many times. And a sitting senator couldn't get an investigation launched for directly observed and reported fraud. So how can this person, at the end of the day, one of the supervisors was signing off on the tally sheets that people brought to him without verifying the number of batches in each box. I went to 3 different counties to observe the hand recount. That was always a recount. Twice I was told that the counties were to report the original tally numbers unless there was a large discrepancy. So do a recount and report the same thing unless it's like a major problem. And of course, there isn't a major problem. Now, I do not know what percentage they use to determine if the discrepancy is big enough or whatever, but they just rubber stamp their own prior work. And this person, Rosemarie Parish, shout out to her, is also joined by another affidavit, just to give us a sampling before the big night of Trump's reveal. Susan Voiles. Remember, this one was submitted in litigation back in November 2020. And this was from this woman over the age of 18. She's a poll manager at a precinct in Fulton County, Sandy Springs. The Fulton County Board of Elections sent an email soliciting poll workers to participate in the hand count of audit votes cast on November 3rd. I accepted the assignment. So I came back for this recount like Angus King, the senator, screams about. My direct supervisor, Mary Wright, asked me if I could confirm that I could show up for the recount from Saturday, November 14th until November 18th. I was told that it was a requirement of accepting the assignment. I got to be there 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I was paid $200 a day. The Board of Elections also solicited Fulton County employees, like workers from public libraries, most of them having no election experience at all. So I get there Saturday, 7 a.m., show up to the Georgia World Congress Center. We had to watch a very short training video. There's no audio, but there were captions on there. I watched it 3 times to make sure I captured everything. But there were some things that were not covered, like what should an auditor do if she sees matters of concern? And I didn't see any information about that. We were also required to sign an oath saying that we would conduct an audit impartially and fairly. And if anything was wrong, we would go before the State Board of Elections. So if you see something, then you're going up to be penalized by going to the State Board. The Board of Elections did not appear to have a standardized process for the audit. Everything was in total disarray at the counting location. And we've seen this before. The guy who invented RLA, like risk limiting audits, he also put together a report and he said, it's garbage in, garbage out. How can you audit things if the stuff coming in is bad and you can't extrapolate from what's coming in into what the full source is? The organizers did not have sufficient tables. When I got there at 7 a.m., 134 tables were set up. I was assigned to table 136. Ultimately, I think they got 170. Counting began shortly after 7 a.m. as best I could tell, but we were held to the side. After 90 minutes of counting had passed, then they assigned us. They do a bunch of work, then the actual monitors come in. Signs taped to the table indicated a place for Trump, Biden, and Jorgensen ballots, and a separate pile for blanks, which had no votes for president. One person was to pick up a ballot, state the vote out loud. The other was to confirm that selection and place the ballot in the appropriate location so people are validating what's happening. Pick it up, Joe Biden. Pick it up, Donald Trump. Everybody's watching. Let me see. Okay. And mark it down. After counting, we were instructed to pick up each individual pile and then count the ballots in each pile and then place them into alternating stacks of 10. After counting the final tally, we were instructed to compare the number with the original number from the opening tally sheet. The tally sheet provided a roadmap to the number that was needed to reconcile the original results. So we began counting at 9 a.m. We were given a tally sheet to record our findings in manila envelopes for write-in candidates and other disputed ballots. Again, we were not giving any information about what to do with spoiled ballots or other discrepancies. Now, we noticed that the supervisors seemed selective as to how to allocate our assignments. For our first assignment, we were given a cardboard box that contained only absentee ballots. It was taped shut with packing tape and the Secretary of State Raffensperger's seal, but the seal was blank. It was signed by no one, and no information had been supplied. There were no markings indicating the provenance of the box, where it came from. The box was just marked number 5, absentee ballots, batch number 28 to 36. Open it up. Inside were stacks of ballots, 100 each. Each stack contained an original tally sheet and said the location where they were picked up. I'm assuming these ballots came from the pervasive ballot boxes that were all around Fulton County. Now, most of the ballots had already been handled. They had been written on by people. The edges were worn. They showed obvious use. However, one batch stood out. It was pristine. There was a difference in the texture of the paper. It was as if they were intended for absentee use, but have not been actually used for that purposes. There was a difference in how it felt. These different ballots included a slightly depressed pre-fold, so they could be easily folded and unfolded for the machines. There were no markings on the ballot to show where they had come from or where they had been processed, and they stood out to me. Now, in my 20 years of handling the ballots, I observed that the markings for the candidates on these ballots were unusually uniform, perhaps even with the ballot marking device. By my estimate in observing these ballots, approximately 98% constituted votes for Joseph Biden. I only observed 2 of these ballots as votes for Trump. Weird. Where'd they come from? Should that be investigated? No, you have no standing to sue. Get out. We left at approximately 4:45 on Saturday. There was still much to be done. We were told to come back on Sunday. It was estimated at that time that the ballot recount would not be completed until Monday, even at the earliest. That's how many ballots were left. So then on our way out, we spoke to an officer and thanked him for being there. We asked him if he would be leaving shortly, and he said he's not scheduled to leave until 11 p.m. Wait, what? At that point, other officers would come in and guard the room from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So then on Sunday, we came back, 6:45. Initially, the fact that there were so few auditors in the room indicated that others were just late. But then by 7:15, we realized that so few additional auditors had arrived that there would not be a lot of auditors for the Sunday count. Interestingly, We were told to go back to our original table. Now, even though the room was sparsely occupied, we were surrounded with 2 auditors immediately in front of us and 2 behind us. We began to notice a greater disparity in the distribution of the workloads. Although the auditing tables surrounding us arrived later, they were assigned large boxes of ballots before we were given them. When our box arrived, after again 45 minutes, I opened the box. We only had 60 ballots from the Quality Living Center. Living or leering? In South Atlanta, a men's housing facility for recovering addicts. And how many times have we seen this story? Send all the ballots to a homeless shelter. Send them all to an addiction center. Send them all to a UPS store. People aren't residing there. You just register them to vote there. The other auditing table got boxes of 3,000 ballots each. So then after we completed our first box, we raised our check card. We're ready for more ballots. After waiting an extended period, we were told our assistance was no longer needed. Thank you. Go home. We offered to help on the larger piles that were still there, and officials present were adamant, we don't need your help. Okay, you're actually doing your job. Get out. I sat at the table for a while longer and noticed how other auditors were treated. We were explicitly told no food or drinks of any kind on the table. Of course, that's understandable, she says. The people behind us and in front of us, however, did. They had open water bottles. They had breakfast burritos. All of them were getting fat off of the Board of Elections. They even had snacks on their table. Also, those tables were not counting as a team, with one pass off from one to the other. Each auditor was counting individually. The purpose of the pass off was to make sure that each auditor agreed that the call for each ballot was accurate. You pull it up, Biden, validate, great, count it. Pull it up, Trump, validated, great, count it. But they were just saying, oh, Trump, Biden. This recount process was consistent with the lack of preparation and contingency plans. This was an unusual election. Here's more. For example, in the setup for Election Day, we typically receive the machines, the ballot marking devices on the Friday before the election. We usually have a chain of custody letter to be signed on Sunday, indicating that we had received the machines and the counts on the machines when received, and that the machines had been sealed. In this case, we were asked to sign a chain of custody letter on Sunday, even though the machines were not delivered until 2 a.m. on the morning of Election Day. The Milton precinct received its machines at 1 a.m. in the morning on Election Day. This is unacceptable. Voting machines should not be out of custody immediately prior to the Election Day. It is possible that these ballot marking devices could have been used for other purposes during that period. So this window where the machines should be somewhere and they're not, where are they? When I asked to sign the chain of custody letter, they say, sign this just to validate it. She says, I only signed the letter with the added language to state that I was accepting chain of custody for the equipment, but the BMDs, the ballot marking devices, the poll pads, none of these other things have been delivered. So I'm not going to sign off on receiving them when they're not here. My precinct should have received the poll pads on Sunday and should have been able to store them inside the BMDs. We could not do that since we did not receive the BMDs in a timely manner. Now, when we did receive the machines, they were not sealed. They were not locked. The serial numbers were not what were reflected on the related documentation, and the green bar coded tags that are supposed to cover the door covering the memory card was broken. You know, like when you open your DoorDash and it's like sealed? So you don't think that the driver just opened it up and started guzzling in some General Tso's chicken? The supervisor told us the machines were in that condition. She says, as a poll manager of over 20 years, I knew this was not the standard operating procedures for these marking devices. Therefore, I did not put them into service. Now, I believe my honesty in this affidavit will lead to my arrangement as a poll worker being compromised. They'll fire her for actually checking. However, the Board of Elections were sloppy, and they led me, in the case of at least one box I reviewed, to believe that additional absentee ballots had been added in a fraudulent manner. This is my personal experience, signed and sealed by Susan Voiles, and none of these claims were properly investigated. The judges said, there's no evidence, you have no standing, it's too late, estoppel and latches and mootness, and he's in the office now. All of this happened and submitted November 2020, the 17th. Don't think she ever testified after a whole slew of discovery at a trial because everything was covered up. But I take the words of these people way more than I would ever believe Brad Raffensperger or Brian Kemp or Vic Reynolds or Scott McAfee. Very detailed, and somebody who was there firsthand, and all of their words were just thrown right in the garbage with all of the Trump ballots. So here's a back and forth from one of the Georgia, maybe fraudulent senators called Ossoff. And here's what he had to say with Jay Clayton, who has a little bit of a difficult time just saying the election was rigged. They changed the rules. There's many ways it can be rigged. Doesn't only have to be voting machines. Doesn't only have to be rigged if a judge says so. The CIA came out. They put pressure on the social media companies with the FBI to stop the Hunter Biden report. The government and the FBI were doing a hack and leak operation. They rigged it. The CIA helped literally work with Joe Biden's team to write the 51 laptop letter. They rigged it. We had Jocelyn Benson entering into settlement agreements, the same type of settlement agreements that a judge just blasted Todd Blanche for, setting new rules and requirements for the elections, bypassing the state legislature completely, rigging the election. Then we had all of the actual mechanics and operations that we just read through that also rigged the election. So I don't know why they can't just say that, but here's this exchange.
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
I'm not going to do this with you.
This is a job interview. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee. Yes, you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee?
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
Like I said, I'm not going to get into that with you.
But you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee.
Is anything that I just said not honest or forthright?
Yes, you're not being honest or forthright. Who won the 2020 election?
I think I've answered the question. We can keep doing this.
Well, we're going to keep doing it because you're not being honest and forthright.
No, I'm not going to engage in the theater.
It's a simple question, Mr. Clayton.
And I've answered.
Who won the 2020 presidential election?
I've answered it.
You're here asking for the support of senators to lead America's intelligence community. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with this committee and with the American public, but you refuse to answer a simple matter of fact about the 2020 election. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
Then answer the question. Who won the 2020 election?
I have answered the question.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer?
Mic off. Eat it.
You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election?
No,
but you asked to lead America's intelligence community? Isn't it humiliating to be unable to answer this question? To have to indulge the president's delusions? We know, you know, everybody in this room knows the truthful answer to that question. Why can you not give it?
I think I gave you the answer.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard?
Yeah, that Gabbard was where? In Fulton County, seizing the pallets full of ballots that have John Ossoff a little bit nervous out there, trying to make this man say the magic words, Joe Biden won the election. We've got a whole slew of rigging that went on. Each one of those things, I think, added to the dispositive outcome of 2020 that was fictionally and fakely reported to all of us. And Ossoff may be trying to set the table to pre-butt whatever's coming from the president tomorrow on Thursday night in the big election reveal. Now, while all this went down, Todd Blanche wrapped up his testimony, and the Judiciary Chair in the Senate, Chuck Grassley, says he feels confident about Todd Blanche. We'll see what the reports are on Jay Clayton. But the hearing today, he thinks they can move it forward on schedule. He says that, of course, Tom Tillis and John Cornyn, two total losers, think that they have some issues, but I think that those can be worked out. And so we'll see ultimately what the Senate does when they come back and vote on these two people. But I think the American people would actually agree with the assessment from the president. You know, that's why they elected him. So Trump can come out and say it was rigged, but I don't know what's so difficult for all these other guys to just come out and say it, because it's true. There's evidence. We've covered it here. We've read through multiple affidavits here, and their responses all fail. They're without merit. They say courts of law came to a final conclusion. Most of those, the vast majority of those, never went past an initial stage. Huge swaths of those were dismissed voluntarily because it was now moot. Biden was already in office, so they dismissed a bunch. Another third of those were dismissed on some justiciability issue, standing, mootness, ripeness, laches, estoppel, wrong party. And the list goes on and on. Even the Supreme Court rejected the states suing the other states, even though they don't have the power to do that. So spare us with the court routine. But it's pretty obvious the election was rigged. That's why they're all so freaking panicked about it. They can't let it go. And the truth is going to continue to come out. And hopefully the president has a big reveal for us tomorrow. We'll be here to cover that one, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Hopefully you're joining us as we do. All right, now let's turn our attention to what's going on with Homeland. This was a little bit of a contentious 24 hours for Markwayne Mullin. Here's the latest. President Trump just reversed Markwayne Mullin. A very interesting and strange policy came down from his office, and the American people didn't like that at all. Even though Susan Collins was pounding the table for it, Trump said, reversed. We're going back to the way it was, and the memo has now been released. We'll share you the details of exactly what was sent out to the field directors and deputy field directors as well, but the president posted this. Markwayne Mullin said we're going to stop the traffic stops. We're going to have this criminal's veto, so whereby people are not following federal instructions and may or may not be actually trafficking methamphetamines. We have no ability to do anything about it because Susan Collins out of Maine is going to cry like a big whiner. So Trump said, actually, the policy's back on. We're stopping criminals. We're not playing this stupid game. He writes the following: the men and women of ICE are doing a great job. One that has to be done. Crime is way down in America, in many cases with numbers that haven't been seen in decades. The open border policy of Sleepy Joe Biden allowed 25 million people to pour into our country, unchecked and unvetted. Many were criminals, and we have to get them out. In order to do this, we must be strong, tough, and smart, and we cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop. Once we do, we're playing right into the criminals' hands, obviously. It's like, why can't you stop illegal aliens? Can all people driving under DUI just continue to drive? Nothing you can do? Okay, just make it. They made it home. Okay, leave them. They got sanctuary in their homes. No pulling them over. What about speeding tickets? You just never stop if you're speeding? Just keep going? Just say I'm an illegal alien. Can't pull me over, cop. Once we do, we're playing right into the criminals' hands. The radical left Democrats would like to see this done, but it won't happen on my watch. ICE, be judicious, fair, and smart, and go back and do your very important job. Keep those crime stat records coming. Remember, you are loved and respected in America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, your friend, President Donald Trump. And so what we saw is this was a reversal, and Just the News gave us a background. Like, why did Markwayne Mullin do this? And he got wrecked on the internet. Everybody is just, from Trump's base, fuming mad about this because it is giving them an excuse. Just drive away. And federal law enforcement cannot be enforced because of this criminal's veto. Now, what happened and what caused this meltdown is the reaction to some shootings. The change in policy followed 2 fatal shootings of motorists involved in 1 week. There was one person fatally shot in Biddeford, Maine. The victim is reported to be a 26-year-old Colombian national, but whether he was the intended target remains unclear. Then on July 7th, there was another 52-year-old, a person called Lorenzo Salgado Araujo of Mexico during a traffic stop in Houston. In both instances, federal officials allege the victim used a vehicle to put the agents in danger, and now they're dead. And we don't want dead people. We don't want our federal agents shooting anybody, but you also can't run over federal agents with your car. When they tell you to pull over and get out, you need to do that. And take a look at this guy, 52-year-old Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. Keep that name in mind as I pull this report out over from Brooke Taylor at Fox News. And who are we dealing with here? Well, they say that inside the van of this guy, Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, 3 bags that are believed to contain meth right inside the vehicle. Maybe that's why he was trying to flee. A Mexican national killed in the ICE shooting in Houston, according to a federal search warrant affidavit. Oh, according to the search warrant, the 3 plastic bags contained a white crystal-like substance in the middle of the dash between the driver and the passenger side of the vehicle. Seen right there. Oh, interesting. So not exactly like a gay barber from Venezuela who's just here to make a better life. Maybe a meth trafficker. Perfect. So Brooke Taylor said that came out from a search warrant related to this guy. And so the memo went out to all of the field office directors and deputy field office directors saying, this is to be distributed to everybody. Effective immediately, all ERO initiated enforcement vehicle stops are suspended until further notice. That was the original report. And that got overturned. Then we saw this directive applies to all law enforcement officers and mandates for personnel to suspend initiating any type of vehicle stop. However, when executing a criminal warrant, please work together with partner agencies to do this. All personnel are instructed to prioritize other existing operational methods outside of vehicle stops to conduct immigration enforcement. Officers should coordinate with their immediate supervisors regarding any ongoing activities implicated by this change. And so that's what the memo looked like. So Mark Wayne Mullin sent that out to everybody, and Susan Collins was very unhappy about this. She sent a whole letter out after another guy in Maine got killed. She said, we write to the DOJ and FBI. We want to investigate this. We understand that an investigation has been opened. We appreciate the steps. The facts around this are of a significant local and national concern. I'm not all that concerned about it. Just follow the law. Don't try to run over agents. Federal law enforcement agencies must fully cooperate. And so we are available to facilitate communication, signed by the leftist role-playing now as a Republican in order to regain her seat, sending this over to Mark Wayne Mullin. So then Mark Wayne came out, and after the president said, you're basically being reversed, he posted Trump's message and says, our number one goal is to keep our officers safe and get criminals off our streets. Hard to do that when they're running away in their vehicles. Illegal aliens will be arrested and deported wherever they are. If you are here illegally, leave now. As our officers carry out operations to enforce our nation's laws, they are facing a more than 1,300% increase in vehicle attacks. So then why did you send out a memo to not pull over the vehicles? We remind illegal aliens attempting to evade arrest is dangerous. Okay, so that's great. Oh, okay. I guess we'll just get arrested then. This reckless illegal alien activity comes after sanctuary politicians held webinars and shared resources for how to openly defy the federal government, like an insurrection, like a soft civil war secession from the federal government. AOC hosted a webinar providing tips for illegal aliens to evade arrests. Dan Goldman, who just got his butt kicked for not being leftist enough, they're going to come for you too. So you can think that you're far left and you're immunized. You're not, Dan, you're out. For calling on illegal aliens to make a plan for ICE encounters, the communist LA fraudster mayor, Karen Bass, she issued a multilingual flyer and online resources advising illegal aliens on how to evade arrest. And Gavin Newsom released guides and sanctuary laws advising them how to recognize ICE and block entry. It's like, thank you for the book report there, Mark. Great job. Thank you for telling us. What are you going to do about it? Other than stopping your enforcement methodology until the president had to come and reverse you. So it's like, man, do you even understand what time it is? So while all this is happening, Eric Schmitt, I think, does get it. He's trying to advance some birthright citizenship integrity in the nation. And here's what he had to say. Today, Eric Schmitt, chairman of the subcommittee on the Constitution, is now submitting a new bill through Congress. Man, he gave us a nice quote here, but this would restore the scope of actual citizenship to only the children of citizens and lawful permanent residents. And he works on the Committee on the Constitution. And here is what his bill has to say. He said, SCOTUS got birthright dangerously wrong. I'm filing the American Citizenship Act to start the process of restoring the 14th Amendment to its own original meaning. My bill restores the original understanding to prevent birthright citizenship for illegal aliens and for tourists. Very simple bill. He said, all we're going to do is amend Section 301 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, calling this new bill the American Citizenship Act. And it's a one-pager right here on Section 2. We're going to revise Section 301A and amend it to read the following. A person born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power, provided that a person born in the United States shall be deemed subject to a foreign power if neither parent of such person is a United States citizen or has been lawfully admitted for permanent residence at the time of this person's birth. Very simple. The amendment made by subsection A may not be construed to affect the citizenship or nationality or status of any person who was born before the date of this enactment of this act. We'll take it. Okay, we'll take it. So just get it through. The Supreme Court will probably strike it down because Amy Coney Barrett has the scaries. Okay. And we'll see if this ultimately passes. Quite frankly, I think that they're perfectly happy with what the Supreme Court did. Not Eric Schmitt, but many others are, maybe even Mark Wayne Mullin. But here was another very interesting image or video that was going around. This is actually from last year, I believe November 25, but it's getting a bunch of attention today and this week. Almost 1 million views on this thing. And apparently this is from Minnesota, where this guy is now a sheriff in Minnesota. You may have seen this story, but he's explaining that since they're Somalian, now he's the sheriff in Little Somalia, Minnesota, and now he's going to be actually serving the Somali people. And so flagging this just so we can see what we're dealing with. Here's this little video right here.
markaan haddaan askarnahay Soomaaliyeed ininka inii shaqeynaa habeenii maalinba ininka inii taagannahay ma fahanteen horta sida ogtihiinba wadankan anaga qaxootiyan imaadnay askar Soomaaliya ma jirin marka hadda anaga markiina la haygareeyay waxay noqotay inaan dadkeena u shaqeyno dadkii dhaqankii ma fahmeynaa luqadii ma fahmeynaa culture-kii ma fahmeynaa marka qofka kale ma taqaana ajnabiga abadaanka iyo anaga waa kala duwanahay because qofkii gaabkii waxa we build that bridge kaas ma fahantay marka insha Allah waa mahadsantiin again ogaada askari kasta oo Soomaaliya dalka iyo dabadaba ininku inii shaqeeyaa habeenkii marka hurudaan iyo marka ma taqaana achieftaanba ininka inii taaganahay oo
All right, so apparently this came over from Somali TV, and he says, now we're Somalian police officers. There were not any of us. We've now been hired, and it means we're working for you, our own people now. And so we don't speak Somalian here, and we don't understand what exactly he's saying. And so we're kind of taking the word of these captions for granted here. But we're different than foreigners. We're different than white officers. And I can understand his take on, there's a bunch of Somalians here, so we don't want to be stopped by white cops or whatever. So we want to have Somalians, I guess, enforcing the law against Somalians. But when he says we're working for you, whether you're in the homeland or abroad, we're working for you. Almost feels like he's representing one community adverse to the others. But can't speak any English, so he really couldn't understand what the hell he said because that's how things are going up there in Minnesota. Now, elsewhere, Tom Homan's getting a little bit fed up. A lot of us are complaining about the lack of deportations that are happening. We were promised that. And we try to stay positive on this, like they're ramping up. They're going to wait till after the midterms, whatever. But what we've seen is that the numbers just are not chipping away at that 25 million, not even close. If the president said there were 25 million people, as he did, who just came in here, Biden allowed over 4 years, 25 million people to come in, according to the president. We really should be having a lot more than we're currently getting on the way out to reach that top line number. And you can do the math, divide 25 million divided by 4. Means we really got to bump those numbers up. But Tom Homan's not happy about some of this criticism. Here's what he had to say. And we understand it's frustrating, Tom. We're on your side. We want mass deportation. So hopefully you can get that going.
Let me address that for a minute. I'm sick and tired of reading about how the administration's lost their guts with mass deportations. And do you know June, last month, ICE arrested more aliens than any month in the history of the agency.
Okay, but how much was that? Like, what was the total number? That's great that it's more, but it needs to be like 10x more. So whatever that takes, like, we need to have a real conversation about it. It's not that we're going to abandon ship. It's like, what resources do you need? If we got to get to 25 million who came in, we got to get close to that number going back out. What do you need? Give us some hard numbers here. And the Oversight Project is now suing to get those numbers.
People say ICE is not serious about their job. Last month, the most aliens arrested in the history of the agency, more than last year, more than when you had the FBI, ATF, DEA, Border Patrol, ICE all out there. ICE by themselves, with their 287G partners, had the most arrests in history of the agency.
It's great.
Now, were numbers down for a few months? Yeah. Why? Because the department was shut down. Right? Agents weren't getting overtime pay. They weren't getting travel. I mean, the travel cards were maxed out, so they couldn't travel to operations. The targeting wasn't being funded like it should have been. So the department was shut down, so of course the numbers are shut down. And why did the Dems shut down the government? I'll tell you why, because I was in negotiation because of Minneapolis. They had concerns about things in Minneapolis. I'm not going to make a judgment call on everything happened in Minneapolis, but that's why they shut it down. Every question, everything they wanted ICE to change and Border Patrol to change, come back to operations in Minneapolis. So, bottom line is, once we got the funding, numbers are going through the ceiling, like President Trump promised Americans.
All right. Well, we hope so, Tom. So we're counting on you, man. We need you to really pull through on this because the clock is ticking and we can't allow them to have the heckler's veto and to prevent the actual operation of the law by throwing little riotous protests out there in Minnesota. So we got another strategy that is happening as well. You see, we've got Kevin Hassett at the NEC. He says, how about we also cut off some of the financial support? And here's what he had to say about that.
Trump regulators seek to discourage loans to undocumented immigrants. Quote, guidance from the nation's financial regulators urges banks to consider risks of offering loans to immigrants not authorized to work in the U.S. Kevin, this kind of seems like a no-brainer to me. Why would loans even be going to illegal immigrants in the first place?
Good question.
They should have been going there in the first place. And the bottom line is that if a bank is making lots of loans to people that might be deported because they have a criminal record or whatever, then obviously that person is probably not going to pay back the loan. And so we view this as a financial stability measure that makes a great deal of sense. And it's, I guess the interesting thing is that the regulators felt they had to issue that guidance, presumably because of something they discovered that was surprising.
Trump regulators.
All right. So discourage loans to people who are here illegally so that they can't buy houses using banks set up for Americans. Makes good sense. So we'll continue to keep our eye on this. I think that, unfortunately, the president has hired some people that are just not all that interested in actually addressing this problem with the same fire and fury that he is. And he's got to kind of keep them all rounded up into the effort. And so Mark Wayne Mullin just got reversed. Hopefully they had a nice hard conversation about this. And we see those numbers go up and to the right because that's what the public voted for. And that's what we want to see happen. And there are downstream effects of this. We could have had a sensible immigration policy if Joe Biden didn't lead the invasion, but he did. And so now we've got a lot of problems. We've got housing problems. We've got job problems. We've got inflation problems and so on and so forth. So the downstream effects of the deportations are these people can go back to their amazing, tremendous, great home countries, and America can have territorial integrity once again. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, we got one more update on the day. And then we'll hear from you. And we're looking forward to all of your comments as well. But we have a very interesting development here that just happened. And this was a good one today. A judicial coup was averted. We had a bunch of judges who wanted to appoint the own U.S. prosecutor that they preferred against President Trump's selection. And they almost got away with it, too, if it wasn't for Trump's immediate firing. The story comes out of Seattle, as usual. And you see this guy right here is named Roger Rogoff, which is the hell of a name. He got appointed to be the new prosecutor in this state. Problem is, Trump never picked him. The judges did that. And Trump immediately came out and within the very first hour of his appointment, He was fired, and it was a lot of drama out there. You can see the original report came down after the court sent a letter over to Todd Blanche. They said this back on July 8th. Mr. Blanche, I write to inform you that the District Court of Washington will appoint this guy. Okay, the court appoints the prosecutor. That's not how it works. The president does that. On Wednesday, July 15th, that's today, to serve as the United States Attorney for the Western District of Washington until his replacement is confirmed. Now, as you're aware, the court opened an application process earlier this year and appointed a panel to pick our guy. The court interviewed candidates that we thought were appropriate, and we picked, the court did, the judges, Mr. Roger Rogoff. Now, Rogoff, they love this guy. He spent decades in the district. He served as a prosecutor, and he's reputed amongst members of the Washington Bar for diligence and fairness. His resume is attached for ease of reference. Doesn't matter, he's fired. The court has every confidence that he'll effectively administer the office for this district. Now, we acknowledge the court that the president has authority to appoint these people, but we're going to bypass you and do it ourselves with the advice and the consent of the Senate, but a U.S. attorney, and we take this action because there's a vacancy here, because John Thune the Goon and the rest of the senators won't let Trump even make a recess appointment and won't actually process these people. And so they say, since we don't have somebody like in line, we're just going to substitute our judgment in and take it over for you. Should you have questions about Rogoff's qualifications or the timing of the court's announcement, I'll be happy to speak with you. You can reach me at this location. I'm David G. Estudio. And so Rogoff was the new U.S. attorney for about 58 minutes, and then the White House fired his ass. 54 minutes later, Trump fired him. You're gone. He showed up today at 7:40 in the morning and swore in. He's a former King County Superior Court judge, and he was appointed at one point by the governor up there in Washington, Jay Inslee. So he's very likely a leftist based on that appointment. But he comes in, I just got appointed. The court appointed me. Great, my first day of work. Probably brought a lunchbox and everything. 54 minutes later, you're out. Pack your bags, get out, don't touch anything. Rogoff also recently resigned from another office and is now in a tug of war with the Trump administration. The district's 17 judges began looking for a replacement for Trump's guy, Neil Floyd, after the president failed to formally nominate him, instead appointing Floyd as interim and the first assistant. So what happened today is Rogoff comes in. He was waiting in the lobby of the courthouse. He was going to go meet with Floyd, the guy he's replacing, presumably to take his office, when he got a text message saying, "You're fired." He said, "We're working on legal action right now, so we're going to sue you." So he's seated there. He's like, "I can't wait to go get my new office. Where is it? Too bad. You're not seeing anything." Rogoff's firing now set up a legal battle over a federal law that gives the federal judges authority to appoint a U.S. attorney if there's not anyone in the position. They say that Floyd, not Rogoff, is a controversial and tough-minded immigration judge, okay? He was appointed by Trump last October, but his name was never advanced to the Senate. And I don't know why, but the Senate sucks, so maybe that's why. Floyd's appointment was opposed by the state's senior senator. Oh, the blue slip. Yeah, the blue slip. Patty Murray and other immigration advocates. So the blue senators are not allowing it to advance, and so Chuck Grassley is in large part responsible for this as well. Rogoff's lawyers are going to sue Trump and say, "You have to pick me." The Trump admin has fired other court-appointed lawyers like Tisa Goodman in Western Washington. Others included Donald Kinsella, who was appointed by a panel of federal judges in 26 up in New York. He was sworn in the same day, but also fired within hours. Then Deputy AG Todd Blanche also publicly stated that judges don't pick U.S. attorneys. We do. The president does. Article 2 of the Constitution says so. Blanche, the former defense attorney, now acting AG, appeared before the Judiciary Committee today, talked about a lot of things. And according to the order on the court's website, we do have, under federal law, the ability to appoint people if we don't have the person that we think should be there in place. Law requires that U.S. attorneys be appointed by the president, usually after consulting with the senior senator, and then they go before the Judiciary Committee. Then it goes to the full Senate for a vote. But U.S. Code says an attorney general can appoint interim U.S. attorneys for 120 days, which is what they did with Floyd. His time expired. The court said, perfect, your time's up. Now we're going to put our guy in here, which means, again, divesting the president of his Article 2 power. Crazy. The administration has made no move to formally nominate Floyd because the blue slip, because blue senators are vetoing it, taking more power. And now a similar controversy has arisen in other locations. Murray criticized various appointments. And so now Rogoff is fired. He was appointed before, and the other guy, Floyd, is much better. But the judge is said, we don't like you. And so we're going to appoint our own dude. So here's what the order came down with from the judge. The judge sent this one out the 15th day of July saying your appointment is now effective, writing the following, saying we've now done this. And the last person nominated was Nicholas Brown. He resigned in 2023. Then other people came in. On May 9th, the district court then appointed Ms. Gorman. Joe Biden did not nominate another person permanently there. Then Trump came in February, dismissed Gorman. You're gone. And now we need to pick somebody. So the chief federal law enforcement officer plays a critical role in this district. And in March of this year, the court said, we're now going to pick our guy. And so we've now done this. We've decided unanimously as a blue court in Washington to appoint a U.S. attorney. And so we hereby appoint Roger Rogoff to be in the position. He's got deep ties to the community, used to be a prosecutor. He's also mentored future trial attorneys. Great. He's going to have a lot more time to do that since he doesn't have this job. And he's now authorized to serve to fill the vacancy until the vacancy is filled by an officer appointed by the president and who is confirmed with advice and consent of the Senate. And so we're going to have an interesting battle on this one. So the court appoints their prosecutor. The prosecutor, of course, is a part of the executive branch. The president says, you're not allowed to do that. Those are my powers. And you can cite U.S. code all you want. I don't really care because Article 2 of the Constitution overrides your crap laws. And we've got some prior precedent here from the Supreme Court saying the executive power has those constitutional authorities to run the executive branch. So all that went down, and it's more activist judges just trying to install a very favorable U.S. attorney. It's blue slip problems. We've got blue senators in Washington who are refusing to actually allow any of Trump's nominees to come through. Chuck Grassley, in addition to helping nuke the filibuster, should also obliterate the blue slip so we can get these people into position so that Trump can actually do his job. The whole thing is a total scam, and they don't honor the red slip when it doesn't serve them. Now, another activist judge is also getting called out for releasing an illegal alien convicted for hijacking an aircraft. Yeah, that's right. This guy, Michael Guerra Morales, is a Cuban. He hijacked an airplane to come to America. He didn't want to just cross the border like a normal person. He hijacked an airplane to give him an A for effort on that one. But according to media reporting, he boarded a commuter aircraft back in 2003, assaulted crew members, then hijacked the plane to force it to fly to Florida. He was arrested by the Marshal Service, charged with aircraft piracy and conspiracy to interfere with a flight crew. He got 22 years in prison. And then once he was released from prison, got picked back up from ICE because, he's an illegal alien. No lawful status to be here, even if you hijack a plane and land it in America. So now we've got an immigration judge who issued a final order of removal in 2023. ICE took him back into custody in 2025. And another Bill Clinton judge just released this dude who filed a habeas petition. And now he's out free. It's crazy. Oh, wild times. So this comes out of the Middle District of Florida. And here's the background. He's a national and citizen of Cuba. He hijacked a commuter aircraft in 2003, assaulted the crew, forced the pilot to land in Key West, Florida. Got 264 months in prison for multiple crimes. He spent 21 years in prison. Then ICE ordered him removed back in after his release. But then another immigration judge said, we can't send you back to Cuba because you're going to be tortured down there. And then ICE released him under Joe Biden in 2023, of course. So then, despite complying with everything, according to the judge, this poor guy, ICE arrested him in 2025. They said, now, if we can't send you back to Cuba because of this little provision, claims against torture, okay, he left the communist regime. We're saying we're going to send you back to Cuba. They said he's going to be tortured in Cuba, so we can't send him back there to be tortured for some reason. It's like our problem. And then what we have is now another option. They say, oh, how about Mexico? We'll just send you to Mexico. You can go be an illegal alien down there. So that's perfect. So then ICE picks him back up, says, Mexico, it's beautiful down there. You're going to love Cabo San Lucas. Once a non-citizen's order of removal becomes final, this judge says he shall be removed within 90 days. Okay, so you see what happens is we didn't deport him quickly enough. Therefore, he needs to be released. The government must detain the non-citizen during the 90-day removal period, and he says he's entitled to release. So airplane hijacker, non-citizen, now invoking American law to prevent us from actually enforcing the law and releasing him back into Florida population. Says, accordingly, if I have not been removed quickly enough, then you can't keep me in custody. They say he's not entitled to relief. He was only detained for 24 days. And there's no dispute that he has been in ICE custody, though, for more than 6 months. And since we haven't gotten him out of here quickly enough, we need to let him go. They say Mexico hasn't officially agreed to accept him yet. And if they don't accept these people, we should just cut off all remittances to Mexico. No more Western Union cash to Mexico. You want any of these remittances? Then you got to help work with us. We'll allow that to happen. Otherwise, we're going to tax them at 90%. What do you think of that? Nor do respondents claim that the necessary travel documents have all been settled. And so it's not foreseeable that he's going to be removed to Mexico quickly enough. And so we're going to let him back out. They've had more than 3 years and more than 6 months under this present detention. And while there may be some possibility, says this judge, that Mexico will eventually accept this guy, it's not happening now. And so based on the evidence, we find that you haven't shown a significant likelihood that he's going to be removed in the foreseeable future. And so therefore, he must be released. Now, if you do have an option to remove him in the reasonably foreseeable future, you can go pick him back up, re-detain him, and then afuera him on out of here. So until then, it is now ordered that his petition for a writ of habeas corpus is granted and respondents shall release him within 24 hours of this order and allow him access to call his family and everybody else who I guess has been here for the other 24 years. And so the whole thing's wild. Here's this guy just loving it up with his wife, living free, living lavish, having successfully sued America on a habeas claim. And we've got other judges like this guy, John E. Steele. Let me take a look at who this is. And others piling in to help him escape removal. And so John Steele, let's just confirm when he was appointed, Bill Clinton, of course. And it doesn't look like we have a photo for this guy. But Bill Clinton appointed him back in the 1990s, guy 77 years old, and took senior status back in 2015, but not senior enough to keep people that ICE wants detained and removed from being detained and removed. Instead, allows them to be released back into Florida. So that's what we're dealing with. We've got activist judges everywhere impeding the actual enforcement of the executive branch. They want to act like a president. They should run for president. Otherwise, they should rein themselves in, get back into their Article 3 territory, let the president actually appoint his own people, not Roger Roghoff, who has now been fired. And so the president will continue to flex on his executive authority. This will be yet another battle where we can't even get our prosecutors in place. So you start to ask, how can we find election fraud in places like Washington when we can't even get prosecutors appointed to the federal districts? How can we prosecute illegal alien crimes or federal conspiracies when we can't get our people in the seats? Very difficult to do that. And Chuck Grassley's helping to enable that by honoring the fake blue code system. And it needs to end. But for now, this guy's fired. He's going to sue to weasel his way back into the executive branch. We'll continue to cover the battle between the branches. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, friends, what a lovely stream it has been. If you're just getting here, thank you for subscribing and joining us, because we got a lot more to get to this week, no doubt about it. If you are just getting here, we had some good Jack Smith news. A lot of people fired up in Congress about it. I think Jack has a sneaky argument about the toll records versus the White House records, and so he'll definitely bring that back up if a prosecution occurs. But that doesn't mean that he is outside the scope of 18 U.S. Code Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Beautiful sound, isn't it? Fits Jack Smith perfectly. And they can charge him with this, no doubt about it, in addition to a broader conspiracy against rights under 241. So we saw all of that. We've got a reminder about what they found on Jack Smith, mishandling classified information, leaving a skiff wide open overnight so anybody could walk on in there, didn't notify Trump or his defense. We got 44 different congresspeople who all had their messages read, and Jack Smith was not completely honest about any of that. We got more from Todd Blanche. We got Kennedy out there. We got perjury allegations. We saw there was an appeal taking place in the Alvin Bragg prosecution out of New York. We reminded ourselves about all of the chain of custody and election fraud issues that we saw back in 2020 by reading these two affidavits, which were very good and very thorough. And so maybe that will reveal some information tomorrow night when Trump hits the nighttime airwaves. We also had Jay Clayton here. Then Trump reversed Mark Wayne Mullin. Mark Wayne sent a memo out to everybody. Stop all traffic stops. Just let meth traffickers run rampant and escape any federal oversight, because Susan Collins had a little cry fest yesterday and doesn't want this to happen. Then Mark Wayne Mullin came out, gave us a book report about what the Democrats are doing. It's like, yeah, we know they're doing those things there, Mark, which is why we want you to stop the vehicles, and really pick up the pace on this. So we got a new congressional bill being advanced by Eric Schmitt called the American Citizenship Act, which would simply change the definition under the INA to say you're a citizen if you're a person born not subject to any power, one of your parents is lawfully here. Somalian sheriffs are taking over. We got Tom Homan, who seemingly is just very frustrated. And man, we feel that there, Tom. We get it, man. We're frustrated too. So let's go have a steak, man. We'll talk about it. But anyways, we got all that. Then we talked about the judicial coup, which was averted at the last minute. This guy showed up to work with his lunchbox and his, what are they called? Fruit roll-ups. And he just got fired. As soon as he walked in there, we read the orders from the judges. We took a look at another judge who let an illegal alien hijacker run free, and Homeland not happy about that, but they can redetain him as soon as the Mexicans will take him back into their land. And so a bunch of stuff that we covered. Now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. It is a beautiful and lovely Wednesday. Thank you for being here. Thanks for liking the video and for being part of the show. We appreciate you joining us. All right, so we got some great comments that I saw come in. What a lovely day. Thank you, friends, for sending in some support and supporting what we're doing here. Oh, I've got an update on the Rubos as well. So I got an email back from the Rubos this morning. Thank you for continuing to pray for them, because they are still in the hospital as of this morning. And here's what we've got from the Rubos, courtesy of the Rubos, from Cheryl Lynn. Hey, Rob. Thank you so much. We are so grateful for your friendship and prayers. Tests show Donald did not have a heart attack, but the cardiologist says he's got some other problems and high blood pressure. So he was admitted into the hospital last night in the cardiac unit. He's scheduled for more tests today. We are in God's hands and grateful for all the prayers from you and the watchers. We feel them. And by the way, Donald is praying for Caleb, the young man with cancer that we learned about yesterday. With love, that's coming from Cheryl Lynn. And so thanks for continuing to pray for Donald and Cheryl Lynn. They're amazing. They're prayer warriors on our behalf when we need them, for everybody in the Watcher fam. And so it's just an honor to be able to send some back their way. So thanks for continuing to do that for them, and we'll keep you updated on how they're doing. But friends, we've got some great comments today. Elk Plow, what's up, Elk Plow? Thanks for being a member and for the great comment today. I'm told Jack Smith isn't a real boy. He's definitely not. Yeah, and your boy got an invite to go hang out with Jesse Kelly this afternoon. We did a full rundown on Jack Smith. But I didn't use that joke because, you know, it's like our joke. I want to be a real boy. You'll never be a real boy, Jack. Ever. Stop trying. Pathetic. Thank you, Elk Plow. Slimmer Stubby, what's up, man? Good to see you. I don't really care if these senators are upset with Smith. They don't give a hoot when it happens to us little people. I have absolutely zero sympathy for them, nor am I even remotely moved by their sudden discovery concern for privacy. Do they need to fix it so it can't happen again? Definitely. But they should have been this upset that it was happening to normal citizens for decades now. You're right about that. Can't argue with that at all. I'm not even sure that they're upset that it's happening to them. I mean, I almost feel like it's like the boy who cried wolf. You know that story? Constantly. It's like, I can't believe this does. How many times have we heard that here? With Jack Smith specifically. Like there was one in February we covered. Then there was another one in March that we covered. Then it's the classified documents that we covered. Then it was the one yesterday about the messages. Every time they come out, I can't believe this is happening right now. I'm so irritated. Prosecute. I'm like, okay. You're just like a wind-up doll. Just like pull the cord and some stupid phrase comes out. I know they're not prosecutors, but I mean, like if they really, really wanted accountability on this, maybe they would just defund the DOJ or form a select committee and haul everybody on Jack Smith's team in. You know, if they're really mad, like there's things they can do. But they don't. They just kind of whine and moan from the X accounts. Hey, what's going on, Tim Jake? So I in other words, I'm with you, Slimmer Stubby. It's like they don't even care about themselves at all. So why would they care about us? They don't. So what's going on, Tim Jake? Yeah, leaving a skiff open overnight does not mean the door was wide open, accessible to anyone. I mean, we take some linguistic, license here. It means the spin lock, think a safe drawer lock, was not locked and the alarms were not set. You still need to swipe your access card and enter your PIN before the day lock will let you in. 34 years Intel security manager and skiff custodian. Well, then why would it be a violation and an incident? Are you saying that nobody could have accessed that? Because it seems like it was a problem from what they said internally. We'll take your word for it. But we do take some, linguistic license here. As far as we can tell, the door was wide open. And there's no evidence in their text messages that it was not wide open from what we can see. But thank you, Tim Jake, for your intel and your guidance on that. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a very big problem if somebody's not validating that it's closed. And then she says back to them in the text messages, can you go make sure it's closed? Can you go check on that? We read it right here. She goes back and says, no one opened it yesterday because no one closed it the day before. Who opened it the day before? That's a violation and incident, so I need to know the details. Okay, I'll send an email. Also, if I'm not there, please check the skiff you leave before you leave to ensure it's closed. Yeah, so could have been wide open, man. Wide open. Drive a truck through that door. Now that Raskin and Brett are gone, I'm very limited in help with oversight. Well, I mean, what if somebody just propped it open with like a doorstop? I don't know. I don't know what kind of skiff they're talking about, but it seems like it was pretty wide open to me. Anyways, thank you, Tim Jake, for the clarity. I would still say, as a defense lawyer, I would make an outrageous objection to that. I'm Trump's defense lawyer. I say this is outrageous. The door was wide ass open. And you didn't tell us about that? That's a violation of my client's rights. There's something that could have happened to the data, and it's exculpatory evidence. And I would make a very big stink about that. And they didn't tell anybody about it. And if it's a violation and incident of the evidence, they should tell somebody about it. But I appreciate your point. So it might be more on lockdown. It was not locked and alarms were not set. You would still need to swipe your access card and enter your PIN before the day lock will let you in. Yeah, but their cards weren't working. Okay, so just to validate something else, their cards were not working. I tried to lock the skiff, but my PIN isn't working. It got upset with me. Now says the door is in alert. Do I need to find someone who had PIN access who can fix this? Disregard, I found this person. He was able to assist in the closing. I'll reach out tomorrow. Find out why my PIN doesn't work. Someone else who opened the skiff yesterday. That's usually the go-to for closing if no one's around. Did you get your PIN issue resolved? No, I drafted the email this morning and it got pulled away. I'm going to send it shortly. No one opened it yesterday because no one closed it the day before. Exactly. Yeah. So their cards weren't even working. So that leads me to believe that somebody just kind of shoved a little, Coke can down in there to prop the door open. Just put a little piece of plastic over the lock. It kind of just opens and closes, I don't know. Could be. You never know. Thank you, Tim Jake. What's up? I'm Pete Picking Cute. I've loved Mike Howell for years. Yeah, man. Mike Howell's amazing. So if you remember, we had a great interview this morning, a live stream this morning with Mike Howell from the Oversight Project. Great conversation. Super smart guy. Crushing it out there. And it was great. So we'll release a video on that. But if you want to join us for these interviews, come join us in the mornings. Hey says, you've got fabulous talent, heart, integrity, and love of the Constitution. You'd be a humongous asset to Oversight. That's interesting. Yeah, interesting idea. That'd be interesting. I wonder, it's a good idea. After baby's born and Alexis is okay, she'll work there, consult with them or do something. Your PCAST could still be done. I'm sure you could still talk about what you wanted. After all, you only tell the truth. Since you won't work for the DOJ, Oversight's the next best option. You miss practicing law. You were born for it. I do miss it from time to time. Yeah, I do miss it from time to time. But I think that we're doing, the reason we got into this space is because I felt like our side had lawyers, which we don't really. I mean, we are really outclassed in terms of institutional capacity. I asked Mike Howell that question this morning. I said, Mike, how big of a difference do you think it is on the right versus the left in terms of legal support and resources to wage this fight? He said, you have to listen to it, 100 to 1. I said, I know, man, it's heartbreaking. So my point was, we don't really have a lot of people who are like the PR side. Like, we needed to come out and defend President Trump because nobody else was doing it. That kind of stuff. So I feel like we're adding to that conversation, but I mean, it would be cool to see how else we could help. So yeah, it's a good idea. And I think we're going to hang out at some point, Howell and I, so it'll be good. Thank you for the idea. Thank you for the endorsement as well. I'm P Picking Cute. Hey, Jim tells you, man, thank you for the raids. You are awesome. Thank you, Jim. Hopefully you're having some great streams over there. Hopefully everybody is enjoying Jim Tells You and his live streams as soon as we wrap here. We like to send you over there. Member for 11 months. Hey, weekend in Vegas. What's up? Mark Wayne Mayorkas Mullin. Oh, man, that's brutal. Oh, it's like right in the... for Mark Wayne. Did you hear that, Mark? Man, you guys better pick up those numbers, man. Otherwise, something like that might stick. It's pretty brutal there. Weekend in Vegas. We want our guys to succeed, okay? So any criticism of them is out of love. 100% love. But they better get those deportations going. Hey, King of Biltong is here. What's up, King of Biltong? Did you know that Biltong makes exceptional travel food? Did you? Clean, protein-packed, grass-fed, air-dried, beef with great flavor. Go to BiltongUSA.com and you can use code Robert and you'll save 10% off. And you'll get that biltong delivered right to your door. Thank you, King of Biltong, for the dono. Hopefully that meat is flying off the shelves. Jedi Trump. Hey, a new baby. Jedi Trump in the house. 9 months as a membo. It's a long time, man. Yeah, what's going on? May God bless you and soon to arrive gift from God. Man, thank you for that, Jedi Trump. Baby coming soon. We've got our virtual baby shower. If you want to join us, link is in the All Links tab in the description, and you can register to join us. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you, Jedi Trump. What's up, Nathan Danner? What's up? Can Trump deport the Seattle Mayor, Katie, the forehead Wilson? Oh my gosh, Katie Wilson. She have a forehead. Her forehead's so big they call it a 5-head. But Katie Wilson, Seattle. Let's take a look at this thing. Oh my gosh, it's like a 6-head. Wow, that's pretty shocking. She have a receding hairline? What's going on over here? Wow, didn't even realize. That's what I'm talking about right there. Look at that thing. Put a billboard on there. Could land a 747 on that thing. Wow, amazing. All right. Well, thank you for that. That's her nickname up there in Seattle. Wow. Katie, the forehead Wilson. Amazing. Can we send her back to New York City where she came from? I don't think they'll want her there, you know. Well, they could. They could put her in Times Square and they could put a big Poly Market ad right on her forehead. She'll be like a multimillionaire, you know. Put like a big Levi's advertisement on there. Hi, Katie Wilson, buy some Levi's. Hey, Michael Manson. Hey, thanks, Rob, for covering these stories. Thank you, Michael Manson. Thank you for being here for 40 months, my man, and going through all of this with us. That was pretty mean, but, you know, I mean, that thing's huge, so I can't help it. Hey, thank you, Michael Manson. 40 months as a member, man. That's a long time. We've been through a lot together, and I'm really grateful for that. I mean that a lot. Thank you for joining us all this time. Hopefully a lot more to come, and we're glad that you're here. Michael Manson in the house. Cliff Meggs, Rob, as I understand it, judges in the 4th District decide to avoid the cumbersome second article to appoint their man. Are people this ignorant, or is this institutional stupidity that can't be fixed? Judges in the 4th District decide to avoid the Article 2, which is the executive branch, to appoint their man. Well, that's what they just did. Yeah, I mean, essentially, they just said that U.S. Code gives them an out. U.S. Code was passed to prevent like a vacancy. So the judges can come in and appoint somebody. Problem is, Trump wants somebody to be appointed, and the blue slip is now invalidating that process. So they're saying they can bypass the president. And Trump is saying, you can do that, but I'm just going to fire them. Appoint whomever you want. I don't really care. I will fire you, and it'll be the end of the game. So I don't think it's stupidity. It's conniving. It's all it is. They're just trying to get their own people in power. They don't want a pro-deportation immigration person in there. They want their own leftist ideologues in there. So they engineer it. Slim or Stubby, can the executive sue the Judiciary Committee members for using the blue slip? I don't think so. No, if it isn't an actual rule or law under the Constitution, isn't it then directly impeding the constitutional structure of our government and therefore unconstitutional? Yeah, kind of, but the Senate, as its own body, can set its own rules. Like we saw this with the Illegal Select Committee. They passed H.R. 503, had rules like 8 Democrats, 5 Republicans, minority chair, all the things. And they didn't follow their own rules. Somebody sued to invalidate the committee. The judges said, we can't, it's their business. Like, we're not going to interfere with what's going on in the internal workings of Congress. So, the Senate, it's advice and consent. Like the Constitution says they can advise and consent. They have a process for doing that. They run it by the senators of the state. If they don't like it, then they're not going to process it. So I don't think there's anything we can do other than scream at Chuck Grassley, which we do here regularly, even though we love the guy. If it makes sense, fighting migraine so difficult to collect thoughts properly. Yeah, the judges just won't interfere. It's their internal process. They did it with the J6 committee. We were all fuming mad. And there was nobody even called it out. Even the Republicans were like, well, and they just kind of went along with it. It was ridiculous. Hey, what's going on? Yeah, hey, MCM, good to see you. This is a great point. The guy who hijacked the airplane, I would have brought that up this morning with Mike. When he complains deportations aren't good enough, we're being fought constantly by these leftist judges and protesters. I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. Like, it's not an easy thing. Like, we can all kind of complain about it as we do here. But you could see the frustration in Tom Homan's face. He's like, then the Democrats come, they turn off the money. Then they engineer people getting killed, and then there's a public outcry about this. I get all of that. I guess my point is, it's like, I think that you might lose some political capital by being overly aggressive, but maybe not, actually. Maybe not. And if you say you can do these things, then you have to deliver. Like if you're the coach of the team and you're losing the game, you can blame the refs if you want. You can blame the weather if you want. You can blame the crowd or whatever. But it's your problem. Like, it's your job. Your job is to get it done however you have to do that. We've got judges in place. We've got protesters. We've got Antifa. We've got traitorous Democrats who prefer the illegals over Americans. Got all that. But we just, you got to get it done. I'm not sure exactly how, but that was the promise to the people. So I get your point though, MCM. Like it's a fight, it's a battle, it's a big battle, and currently they're winning. Smooth Brain Crypto, what's up? The executive branch and Treasury Department need to declare a national initiative on employment tax fraud, direct the IRS CI division to flood businesses with audits for hiring illegals. Yeah, and I think wasn't there something on that, like the E-Verify? Not sure if that's been actually implemented a lot, but yeah, like you're not supposed to do that. A lot of it's happening under the table with cash and things like that. But yeah, Smooth Brain Crypto, right? I think if you get rid of a lot of the incentives, you cut off the lawyers, you cut off all of the immigration fraud, you cut off all sanctuary cities' money, all of it. SNAP benefits, FEMA money, whatever. Okay, federal government just cuts it off and they can pay for healthcare. If the Californians want to pay for everything for illegals, comes out of their budget. They're not reimbursed by the federal government. Cut off all of the incentives and correct this problem. All 25 million that Trump is referencing will have no more benefits and they can go home. Sandy, John Solomon is on the task force for declassifying material and knows what Trump is planning to reveal. I've heard that, right? John Solomon is a special government employee and we're curious to see what he reveals and what the plan is for the revelations. Is it a plan that will justify some action, or is it just like an informational conversation? We're going to find out tomorrow, and it's going to be great. Very interesting. Baby Lewis, wouldn't there have been CCTV on it? Come on, man. Where's the camera? I don't know. On the skiff? Good question. I would presume there are cameras on it. But maybe they went blank, like the Epstein cameras. You know, everything just kind of dropped dead. Nobody has any recordings. Who knows? Good questions, though, Baby Lewis. But as far as I'm concerned, the door was wide ass open. Huge, wide open. People coming and going, total breach of the integrity of the skiff. And Jack Smith and all of his people are guilty of mishandling classified information. And he can defend himself accordingly. Rick D, White House officials have been asked to turn over their phones for examination over the leaks about Air Force One. Wild. That's interesting. Yeah, so they're also subpoenaing the journos for that info. They're all flipped out about that. Also going over and after the phones. Got to stop the leaks, man. That's not a good leak. Good to see you, Rick D. Cheers, my man. Good to see you here. I'm glad you're doing well. Sandy, MS Now reported crazy stuff about Trump's upcoming speech. Said he plans to lay the groundwork to use PEADs to lock people up without trial at the 4-minute mark. Focus on voting machine security. YouTube video. Interesting. Thank you, Sandy, for that. Lock up people with no trial. So MS Now is totally crazy. So hard to take their word for anything. But it's going to be interesting. Yeah, they're really kind of hyping this thing up a bit. So we're looking forward to it. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about it when it goes live. I don't know what our schedule will be tomorrow. I think we'll probably just save our stream for the late night. So unlikely to be here at our regular time, but come back much later, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So like 4 hours later, and we'll come back and do that. And we'll just do a show around that and see what else is cooking on the day. Sometimes he's late, so we'll have some other business to attend to, but I'm looking forward to it. Hey, The Veil says Argentina beat Britain. Nice. Therefore, Argentina wears blue and wins. If Spain wins, they won't be wearing blue. So you'll be having a girl. I don't know what's going on. We're going to find out soon, though. And quiet in Texas. Trump sidelined Mullin with that appointment. You mean pulling him out of the Senate, kind of neutering him a little bit? The Veil, when Mullin was put to slang, my brain wasn't translating. It's not mullet, it's Mullin. Yeah, it's Mullin, not mullet. He doesn't have a mullet. He's named Mark Wayne Mullin. That's from The Veil in the house. Thank you, The Veil, for those comments. Great to see you. All right, friends. And so one final check. Let's see what else is cooking on X. Any comments over there? No, that's not what we're doing right there. Here's where we're live. Couple of comments over here. Neuro D, man, thank you for linking up and sharing our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community. We appreciate that. We love Neuro D in the house. And No Rose Glasses. Guess what system allows you to do that? And Georgia signed to bring this group on. Voting Works, aka Democracy Works, aka Enhanced Voting. Yeah, Georgia's a mess. I mean, they passed rules to say that they were not going to do the QR code thing anymore. And then, of course, did that anyways. Hey, what's up, Bodie? You know I'm a faithful follower, and I listen to you twice a day, every day. Bodie, thank you, man. That's a real honor. It's a lot. It's a lot of me. You know, I got to deal with myself even more than that, but that's a lot. But I definitely am enjoying the interviews. Man, thank you, Bodie. That's awesome. I'm glad you like them. They are good. It's good to hear from someone else. And Ivan Raiklan was yesterday. We had Mike Howell today. I've got a bunch of other people queued up, and we're excited about it. Sandy, the video clip of Solomon gave me the impression it will be something like a portal and lightning speed reveal for the purpose of the grand conspiracy case, otherwise a long court battle over declassifications. Interesting. Like a portal and lightning speed reveal. Well, we're going to find out soon, man. It's going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah, I know. Baby's coming soon. Hey, what's up? Chat with me. You need to talk with Harambe and state firmly he is not to make his appearance tomorrow evening. For our, yeah, Harambe, you mean Harambe, Agamemnon, Genghis, Tiberius, Gouveia? Or Genghis, Tiberius, Harambe, depending on if it's a boy or a girl. We'll have to find out. Thank you, chat with me. Yeah, hopefully no babies in the middle of Trump's epic speech. And the Rubos are here, man. Great to see you, Rubos. Thanks for the update. Thanks for sending this one in. Thank you all so much for the wonderful support and prayers. It truly means more than we can express with words. I'm not out of the woods yet. More tests showed need for an angiogram and possibly a stent. That's good. I mean, at least you know. That's great. Scheduled for tomorrow. Keep those prayers coming, especially for my beloved wife, Cheryl Lynn. She is strong, but could use your prayers. You got a great wife. You guys are amazing. So prayers up for Cheryl Lynn. Prayers up for Donald. This is an update from Donald. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I love you all and look forward to seeing you on Locals as soon as I'm able. Love, Donald. Man, amazing. So prayers up for Donald and Cheryl Lynn, my friends. Still in the hospital, but it sounds like they've got some good developments, right? They are getting some testing. They're in the care of some very skilled people. And so it's good to hear that there are some solutions that are percolating in this hospital room. And so we'll continue to pray for the Rubos and ask our Heavenly Father to keep them in his care as they finish this process and emerge stronger than ever. Thank you guys for the update. Really, really great to hear from you. So, man, the Rubos, what a great way to close it out. Good stuff. Oh, yeah, Leonidas, too. I forgot to add that one in there. Leonidas is pretty cool, too. For a boy. Yeah. Otherwise, Harambe for the girl. I like it. Leonidas is good. All right, so, friends, we'll pause here on the day. And Sandy, hey, what does Joey think about the baby? Joey wants a girl. He wants a girl. I think if he says, he says he doesn't want a boy. Like, he's not going to be happy if it's a boy. I said, well, if it's a boy, you're still going to be his uncle. He said, no, I'm not. So, yes, you are there, bucko. Oh, no, I'm not. I want a girl. I said, all right. Well, we'll see. So he may not be happy about it, but it's just nature, you know. He'll be all right. So we'll pause here. Thank you, Sandy, for asking about it. And yeah, just Rhonda. So we're going to do a poll. We're going to on the virtual baby shower. If you want to join us, there's a Zoom link. Just go into the description, click the all links. It'll take you to this like menu. And then in the menu, you'll see the Zoom registration and you can come and join us on Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Everything calculated back from there. I think we're going to have polls. We're going to have a whiteboard. We're going to have activities. I don't even know what's going on because I've never done a baby shower before, but we'll be there. It's going to be fun. So if you want to come join us, go register on Zoom and we'll see you over there. But we're excited for it. So coming up soon this Saturday. And then it's getting real. It's getting real, man. All right, but we'll pause here. Once again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for subscribing on the way out. and liking the video. We'll send you over to Jim Tells You on YouTube. Big thank yous to our amazing mods and meme smiths. We got John in the house. Great to see you, John. We got Muffin Rando. What's up, Donut? Clipping for us. We've got K Bean in the mornings. We've got Neuro D, Janik, and Dog Digger over on the Rumbles, keeping things nice and orderly. And of course, Just Rhonda, Geegum Geegum, and Doc Master Elliott all in the house, keeping things nice and orderly. And my friends, very happy to have you here. I hope that you come back and join us tomorrow night. We'll be later tomorrow night, and we'll see what the president has to say. But until we're back here, I hope that your evening is beautiful and outstanding. You have peaceful, pleasant, and beautiful dreams. And you return tomorrow night for the big reveal, because in order to do all of this appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Sleep very, very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye. Where'd the song go? I don't know where the song is. We'll fix that tomorrow. Make it a great night. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.